Hi, it's Mitchell German. I'm the creator of the Screenwriting Mega Course. I'd like to take a few minutes to explain why this course is different than anything else out there when it comes to learning how to write a screenplay. You see, when it comes to screenwriting, there's one really important question. And the question is this: is there some secret formula that successful screenplays somehow incorporate? In other words, is there some key or way to write a screenplay that will increase its potential to get recognized by Hollywood and therefore increase its potential to get sold and made into a movie? And if there is some secret out there, can it be learned and incorporated into the screenwriting process so that the average screenwriter can write screenplays that will be more likely to meet those Hollywood standards? And the answer to all these questions is obviously yes. There is a key to writing successful screenplays. But not only is there a secret to making a screenplay work, there's also a specific technique that allows a writer to easily unlock any story's potential. Please realize what I'm about to tell you is not some gimmick or shallow sales pitch. Rather, using a simple technique called the core element method, a writer can easily take an idea for a movie, any idea for a movie, and develop it so that it has all the same characteristics that are found in the most successful movies ever made. And we're talking about movies that encompass every genre and type. Action movies such as Die Hard and Armageddon, comedies like Sideways and Liar Liar, romance movies such as Notting Hill and French Kiss, as well as dramas and thrillers and horror movies and other genres too. In fact, the list of movies that have these same fundamental patterns would encompass nearly every major movie made in the last 30 or 40 years. And it's important to note that behind every successful movie was a screenplay that was first recognized for its potential. In other words, every time you see a movie, there was first an idea for that movie, and then that idea was turned into a screenplay, and only after that was it finally filmed and made into a movie. So what exactly is this big secret? You see, there are really only two types of movies. Now, I'm not talking about genre or concepts such as a character-driven movie or a plot-driven movie. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm actually talking about something much more fundamental that all really good movies have in common. Now, on the surface, this is going to seem really simple and totally obvious. But in truth, what I'm about to explain is much more important than most writers, even many professional writers, ever realize. And understanding this and its implications can very well determine if a screenplay ultimately sells and gets made into a movie, or if it doesn't. And this applies to both professional working writers and aspiring writers alike. You see, every movie is going to be about one of two things. A movie will be about a main character who is trying to do something, or it's going to be about something that's happening to the main character. That's it. Every movie will fall into one of these two categories. Like I said, this concept is going to seem so simple on the surface, but it's actually much more complex than it appears to be. Because in fact, the truth is something else. And this is the key to writing multi-layered movies with complex plots and deep three-dimensional characters. You see, with few exceptions, most successful movies always have both storylines taking place in tangent. In every good movie, there's always a two-tiered component to what is taking place within the story. On the one hand, the main character is trying to do something, while on the other hand, something is happening that is beyond their control. And these two components will always manifest themselves with one is the primary plot, or the main storyline that is taking place, and the other is the main subplot. And those two storylines must become interwoven as a movie progresses, such that they impact and affect each other as it pertains to that main character. And that is the key. That's the secret. The two storylines must impact and affect one another. Now, before I explain how this is done, let me first explain this concept a little bit further by using an example from a real movie. I'd like to look at the movie Die Hard with Bruce Willis. You see, if I asked someone to tell me what the storyline of Die Hard was, most people would say that it's about a tough New York cop who saves the day when terrorists seize a building and take everyone hostage. Or they would say something along those lines. So we would say that Die Hard is a movie about something that is happening to the main character. The terrorists raid the building. That's the something. And the main character has no control over that. In fact, he spends most of the movie trying to get control of that situation. But let me ask you another question about Die Hard. Why is Bruce Willis's character, and in the movie his name is McClane, so why is this character McClane in the building in the first place? Why is he there at all? This is a critically important question. You see, when Die Hard begins, it starts with McClane in an airplane traveling to LA. And why is he doing that? He is going to LA to visit his wife, his estranged wife who has moved to LA to pursue her career. You see, the main character has a purpose, a focus, and a direction that is totally unrelated and completely irrelevant to what is going to happen in the movie, which is that terrorists are going to seize the building that the main character is going to happen to be in. In fact, that purpose of visiting his wife is interrupted by the terrorists, such that when those terrorists raid that building, they prevent the main character from completing that personal goal, which was to visit his wife. And that relationship between McClane and his wife becomes the main subplot, while the terrorists and what they're trying to do creates the primary main plot. So what we see is there is this two-tiered situation taking place in Die Hard. On the one hand, something is happening to the main character, while at the same time the main character is trying to do something else. But the two storylines are completely unrelated. And this is where good movies do something else. Pay attention here, because this is actually the secret. Good movies take that unrelated personal storyline, in this case McClane visiting his wife, and they weave it into the primary plot, which is in this case the terrorists raiding the building, such that the outcome of one depends on the outcome of the other. And this is very important. What happens at the end of Die Hard at the climax? You see, those terrorists discover who McClane's wife is, and she becomes a special hostage, such that if McClane does not stop those terrorists, which again is totally unrelated to his visiting his wife and why he's in LA, then she will be killed. Essentially, the storyline of the terrorists seizing a building becomes a personal issue for the main character. He had nothing to do with it, but now it means everything to that character. And this happens at the end of the movie, at the climax. You see, at the climax, the resolution of the hostage situation becomes a personal issue that is now directly related to why the main character is there in the first place. The two unrelated storylines have become linked and woven together. But the truth is, there's much more going on in Die Hard in terms of these dual-tiered storylines. Concepts such as the theme and the structure and character arc, all of these things relate back to the relationship between the main plot and the main subplot. Let me just give you another example of this. This one is also from Die Hard. We'll just stay on the same track here. Let's look at the theme of Die Hard. Now, if I asked you, what is the theme of Die Hard? Well, this question is not so easy. In fact, I typically get lots of different answers and quite a few blank stares. And as you're about to find out, there is an unmistakable, very clear theme in Die Hard. And it's not about one man saving the world or anything to do with a big action concept. That's what the story is about. That's the subject matter of the movie Die Hard, but that's not the theme. So what is the theme in Die Hard? In Die Hard, the theme is identity. That's right, identity. In fact, the theme of identity runs through the entire movie, and it can be found in every subplot as well as the main storyline. So you're probably now wondering, how so? Because you've probably seen it a few times, and you've never noticed that there's a theme of identity. So let's take a look at this. You see, Die Hard opens with McClane, the character McClane, traveling to visit his estranged wife. And he gets to the building where she works and where the Christmas party is taking place. And the first thing he does is he stops at this computerized directory and he types in Holly McClane, which is not listed. And he thinks for a moment, and then he types in Holly Gennaro, which is her maiden name. And there it is. Then he goes up to the party and he's escorted to her office. And what's the name on the door? Holly Gennaro, her maiden name. A moment later she comes in and then they have an argument. And what is that argument? What is their dialogue all about? It's about her name. It's about the fact that she's using her maiden name. A moment later she steps out, and that's when the terrorists raid the building and he manages to escape. So at this point of the movie, as the terrorists raid the building, we've established this main subplot between the main character, McClane, and his wife. And what does this entire subplot revolve around at this point in the movie? Her name. Everything about these two characters revolves around what name she is using. In other words, it's all about her identity. So what happens next? So McClane starts running around the building and he's killing all of the terrorists. And of course, they don't know who this person is because all of the guests of the Christmas party are accounted for. He's even referred to as the mystery guest. And then he calls himself Roy Rogers. In other words, his identity is unknown. But the theme goes much further than that, because what happens next? McClane alerts the police and develops a relationship with Sergeant Al Powell, who is the black cop. And most of their dialogue, as well as the dialogue between the other cops, revolves around McClane's identity. Is he a cop or is he not a cop? Is he a good guy or bad guy? They don't know who this guy, this vigilante is running around the building. Then another storyline comes into play. This one is with the reporter. And what is his relevance? Well, he's the one who reveals who this vigilante running around the building is. He's the one who reveals who McClane is. He even goes to Holly's house and interviews her children, their children. And because of this, he also reveals Holly's real name. And that's how the terrorists find out who she is. And this all goes back to what we were just talking about a little earlier in this video. It's because of that she becomes this special hostage, and that's what links the two storylines together, the subplot and the main plot. But does it end there? Of course it doesn't. What about the end of the movie? McClane saves the day, and of course he saves his wife, and they're leaving the building together, and finally they meet Sergeant Powell, and McClane introduces his wife as Holly Gennaro. In other words, he uses her maiden name, but she corrects him and calls herself Holly McClane. So what we see is this theme of identity literally plays out to the very end of the movie. It's how they began. Their first initial dialogue together was all about her name and the name she's using, and at the very end, it's all about the same thing. It's still about her name, and that's how theme works in a movie. It ties the entire subplot, in fact, all of the subplots, together. In fact, the reporter who revealed their identity, he's also in the scene. He also comes back into play at the end of the movie. And that's how the movie ends on the note of identity. We also see that at this point of the movie, at the end of the movie called the conclusion, all of the major subplots are present. We've got McClane and his wife, we've got McClane and Powell, the cop Powell, and we've got the reporter. The three main storylines are all accounted for at the resolution of a movie. And this is a pattern we see again and again and again and again with successful movies. So one of the things I teach is something called the thematic gap. And the movie Die Hard really is a perfect demonstration of this. You see, the thematic gap defines the conceptual space in which the main character specifically and other characters as well are challenged from within a given story. I can't stress this enough that Die Hard is really just one example. The thematic gap is present in nearly every single successful movie. And this relates back to understanding how a character arc in a movie truly works and how a character arc always relates to the theme of a movie, and it's always a function of a subplot or of subplots, not of the main story that's taking place. That just facilitates the underlying subplots to have movement. And these concepts actually go back to something else I teach, which are called the 8 core elements of a movie. You see, at the heart of every movie, there are 8 fundamental parts called the core elements. The core elements form what is essentially a skeleton frame upon which everything else in a movie is built. And these core elements cut across all genres and types. You can take action movies such as Die Hard and Armageddon and match their core elements to the core elements in character-driven movies such as Sideways or Notting Hill, or comedies such as Liar Liar and French Kiss, or thrillers or horror movies or any other genre. The most successful movies always have these core elements at the very heart, at the very root of what the movie is all about. And if a writer knows what these 8 parts are and how to use them, then that writer will have no problem conceptualizing and developing an idea for a movie, any idea that they might have for a movie, into a fully fleshed out feature-length screenplay with characters and plots and themes and structure and layers that will meet and probably even exceed the strict expectations that are required by Hollywood. And that's what will give a screenwriter a real, true opportunity to sell a screenplay and to break into Hollywood.